chat feature, if you could identify, you have your name on the screen, but if you want to further identify who you are for our minutes, that would be very helpful.
Do you want to start?
Actually, you could just do it via the chat function right now. I'm going to go ahead and send a message out to everyone. So if you just want to provide it via chat in the text there, that would be perfect. And the other thing, at the end of the meeting when we have public comments, if you could raise your hand, there gives you the option to raise your hand. If not, you can also just in the chat let me know that you want to provide public comments, and we'll do that as well.
Folks a minute so and caught up Susan will be a minute or so.
So you can probably do that.
Okay.
Thanks, Tony.
All right. Thank you, Brad. I wanted to go ahead and acknowledge we do have, and we'll get into this agenda item a little later. We do have I believe we have a representative from potential outside legal counsel sitting in virtually. They are not yet contracted with the district yet, so they're simply there to participate for background purposes only. I'm going to go around and let people introduce themselves, but one change in the agenda had to do with environmental justice and economic justice. Kirsten, did you have any remarks you wanted to make? I know you were originally going to give a little presentation on that, but I don't know if you had any remarks you wanted to make at all.
No, not at this time.
That's been delayed. I think we kind of, I didn't mean to ask anything, but you had indicated you need a little more time to look into the situation on that. And Kirsten, maybe could you start off, just briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll go around the table.
Yeah, sure. My name is Kirsten Jones. I'm the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coordinator for Hamilton County Public Health.
Yifeng?
Nifong Chen, Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office, Counsel for Solid Waste, Local.
Dr. Yonker, I'm the Director of the Waste Management Division for Hamilton County Public Health.
Magnus, Representative for the City of Cincinnati.
And Bob Getter, the Public Representative on the Policy Committee.
Brad Johnson, the Director of Hamilton County Department of Environmental Services.
Hamilton County R3Source.
And I'm Tony DiPuccio. I'm on the I'm chairman of the the Rules Subcommittee meeting here today. So the agenda, I believe, was passed out. I assume I had a copy in the back for anyone that would like a copy of it. So our first agenda item was a follow-up on from our first meeting. There were some questions on that. And Brad, are you going to take that, or Michelle?
We'll kind of do both. So
okay.
I'll start with, one of the questions was, and it is partially legal, so I can't provide you the legal information yet, but if permits were applied for during this phasing of where we're exploring, what information we can about rules in the subcommittee, what would happen if, in particular, Bond Road were to apply for something. And I contacted Russ Brown. He's the assistant chief with the Southwest District of Ohio EPA, and he assured me that all of the permitting that goes through Ohio EPA, so he said that contacting Columbus would not even be necessary, that everything that goes through their drinking and groundwater, materials and waste management, of course, surface water, and then air pollution control, which actually goes through this office with our Southwest Ohio Air Quality Agency, that he would be fully aware and he would notify us of anything, and that as of this moment, he did not have anything expected that would be immediate. I can't report that. Michelle, did you have anything on your end that you wanted to report?
I don't have any substantial information. We did send a letter to the prosecutor's office with the
three main questions that the committee had, legal questions, and they replied back that they would like us to seek outside counsel that specializes in this. So we are currently working on getting a contract with outside counsel that would specialize in this. So we don't have answers to those original questions, which my Outlook, because I have Zoom, my Outlook is freezing up on me. But if I remember from memory, the primary question was sort of what Brad was talking about, but as far as the timeline. So should a facility request a permit to expand or to build before Hamilton County has rules, what does that mean for our rules? Does that not apply to that facility? Then the other question was around what facilities are included in this? So is recycling facilities included? And then the other one was really just what is the extent of the rule-making authority? So it was a little bit more broad. So those three questions I don't have answers to.
Michelle, we are expecting that we will have hopefully an agreement secured next week. Is that correct?
I hope so, yeah.
Right. Thank you, Michelle. I'm sorry. Sharon, could you introduce yourself? Sharon's not here, but she is on the,
Yes.
coming in virtually.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm Sharon Lutz. I'm a resident of Hamilton County, Whitewater Township. I'm the navigator for We Thrive in Whitewater Township and owner of a business in the township as well.
Thank you, Sharon. Thanks for joining us today
Thank you.
remotely. Let's see, our next agenda item is MSD presentation. Brad or Michelle?
Did you want to introduce John Sullivan?
Sure. So John Sullivan's here. He also has a few other colleagues from MSD, including Mike Capel that I see. So I'm not sure if it's John who's going to be giving the presentation or someone else. John, do you want to pull up the presentation or would you like me to?
Should be able to.
And just as a reminder, the subcommittee had requested a presentation from MSD around the discussion of what happens to the discharge, the leachate. And so that is what John is going to be talking about.
All right, so I'm an industrial investigator with the Metropolitan Sewer District. And one of the industries that I'm responsible for regulating is the Rumpke Sanitary Landfill. And I'm going to discuss how we manage the wastewater discharge to the MSD sewer during a wet weather event. So stormwater at the landfill that leaches through is collected as leachate, and that is discharged to the MSD sewer at the landfill, and that is controlled by a wastewater discharge permit, which the company needs to meet certain parameters and has certain restrictions on what they can discharge to the MSD sewer. The stormwater runoff at the landfill, that is regulated under a NPDES permit, which is a separate permit from MSD, and that's controlled by Ohio Epa. And the phase 5 leachate is not discharged at the sanitary landfill. That was the section of the landfill that was impacted by the thermal reaction, and we had some issues with that discharge. So Rumpke was permitted to haul that to a separate site to discharge to the MSD sewer. So just as a background, at the top of the map there, you can see the landfill, and this is the MSD sample location. Some of the other significant points on the map are the Niagara Street flow level monitoring, the Rumpke Sanitary and Recycling Station located in St. Bernard, our sanitary sewer overflow 1066, which is located less than a mile from the Mill Creek wastewater treatment plant. So during wet weather, Niagara Street sewer is monitored, and we look at the level of the sewer in there. Once that sewer reaches a certain level, it sends a signal to the Rumpke pump stations at the landfill to halt discharge to the sewer. We're trying to prevent any leachate from going through any of our overflows during a storm event. So they're notified of that, and they will halt discharge to the MSD sewer at the landfill. The Niagara Street sewer, there's a couple of controls. Is the control panel that monitors the flow and level, and then in the manhole itself is the actual float. So when the sewer surcharges, it'll activate that float, which notifies the Rumpke pump station they discharging at that time. The phase 5 leachate, it's a higher strength leachate, and we do accept that to be discharged at MSD, but that is hauled to the St. Bernard facility and discharged there. MSD with Rumpke installed some signal lights, green and the red, to control discharge destination during wet weather conditions. So when there is a wet weather condition, the landfill will be notified whether they are able to discharge the phase 5 leachate and where they have to discharge that. Conditions of that discharge are controlled by MSD's SCADA system. That's a system that monitors the different points in the sewer, and we're looking at elevation, overflows, things of that nature, and that helps determine where this leachate can be discharged. A green light signal indicates the leachate can be hauled to the Rumpke recycling facility and discharged there. And this is at the landfill, the hauling site, where leachate is loaded onto the tankers. These two control lights here, green light signals everything's good. The leachate can be taken to the recycling center and discharged there. That would be a flashing green light. And then in the event of SSO condition 1066, then the red light would signal and we'd have them discharge at a different location. This is an aerial view of the Rumpke recycling station, and where this is where it would discharge. It's discharging into a 57-inch sewer, where back at the landfill, our sampling location is located on a 12-inch sewer. And then here's the recycling center. The discharge location is over here at this manhole. There's two hoses here that would connect to, two trucks could unload at one time, connect to the truck, and then they could discharge. So during a wet weather event, when we don't want the discharge to be at the Rumpke Recycling Center, it would signal at the hauling location at the landfill itself, notifying the drivers that we don't want them to discharge at the Rumpke Recycling Center. And so there's certain conditions that would trigger that red light. If the sanitary sewer overflow 1066, if the elevation of the water is above 458.73 feet above sea level, then that would trigger a red light. If the main gate at the Mill Creek wastewater treatment plant is less than 95% open, that would also trigger the red light. That means the Mill Creek plant is going to what we call throttled back, and they're trying to prevent too much flow from getting into the plant at once. So we wouldn't want Rumpke discharging above SSO 1066 to avoid any release of any leachate to the Mill Creek. And then again, the SCADA system will send out text and email notifications to certain people within Rumpke and MSD to notify them of these conditions so that no discharge happens where it's not supposed to. Oops. I went one too fast. One slide before that was just our SSO 1066, which, like I say, is located right on the Mill Creek, probably less than a mile from the Mill Creek treatment plant. And again, in the event of a wet weather condition, this red light would be flashing at the loading of the leachate at the landfill. And these are copies of the email and text that would be sent to specific people to notify them that the driver shouldn't be discharging at the recycling center and that they should bring that leachate down to the Mill Creek treatment plant itself. And so Rumpke and MSD came up with a design to discharge during those wet weather events. They'll discharge in between the primary and the secondary treatment phase at the plant. That's this section here. And we have set up some hoses for the trucks to back in, unload. There's a containment system here in the event of any spillage that would get out. We can control that. And the leachate is discharged into the channel between primary and secondary and allowed to go through there. Certain restrictions for discharging at the plant. It's limited to 250,000 gallons per day. No time could there be more than 2 tankers discharging at once, and we don't want any more, or we want that discharge at least 20 minutes apart to allow our secondary treatment to handle that discharge. And then discharge can't exceed 140 degrees Fahrenheit. That's just part of our discharge restrictions for all of our industrial waste discharges. So that's a brief summary. Are there any questions I could answer?
Thank you, John. We'll see if there's any questions from any of the Sue, Bob.
Thinking about it.
Just a single question. The chemical composition of the leachate, can MSD handle that, or is there any complications in handling it?
No, it's the leachate has to meet the permit required conditions, so it's the same as what would be discharged at the landfill. The phase 5 leachate, we allowed that to be held down because there were some initial problems with odor and some foaming issues. And that line was going through a residential area. It still met our parameter limits, but because of the odors and some of the foaming, we had them truck that down to the recycling center. Like I say, that is on a much bigger line, so we were able to avoid a lot of those problems that we had initially. But the parameter limits are still being met. Rumpke samples for those, MSD samples for those to make sure that they're still meeting their permitted limits.
Yeah, no, I do have a question. So I see that there are a lot of procedures in place to try to prevent any discharges, but have there been any discharges of leachate that were not treated in the last 5 years?
That's not that I'm aware of. Like I say, the main thing was to prevent that from happening. So their current permit went into effect in 2018, beginning of the year in 2018. So as far as I know, since then, we haven't had any issues.
So it was, yes, in 2018 that occurred, right?
Yeah, the permit was in effect 2018. That's their current. Before that, there was another permit. So they've been covered under a permit. I've been here 28 years, and I think ever since I've been here, they've been covered under a wastewater discharge permit.
All right, thank you, John. This is Tony DiFuccio. I have one question, or maybe just making sure I understand the permit requirements that MSD has set up. So Bob asked about the leachate quality. That's I know checked periodically. On the rest of the requirements in terms of whether you can haul or discharge directly to the sewer, so that's all based upon controlling or metering the quantity of the leachate going in. And one part of that is to avoid any combined sewer overflows, and the other part of that is to assure that it doesn't exceed the hydraulic capacity at the Mill Creek plant. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, so we did a study on before we allowed the leachate to be discharged directly into the channel before secondary to make sure that there wasn't going to be impact to the treatment plant for that. And so that's why we set those certain limits. Like I said, they can't discharge more than 250,000 gallons per day. And I think the study itself, based on the bench testing, they figured the treatment plant could handle 500,000 gallons per day. So they basically set it at a lower level to make sure we ensure that the treatment plant can function properly.
All right. I have one other just clarification, John, is that Metropolitan Sewer District here, as well as probably, I'm going to say 75 to 80% of the metropolitan sewer districts throughout the U.S. Are under an agreed consent order with U.S. EPA to upgrade particularly their collection systems to eventually eliminate any combined sewer overflows. Again, is that a quick 2-sentence or 3-sentence summary of that situation as well? So you have U.S. EPA still overlooking your operations?
Yes, we're under a consent decree as well.
Okay. Bob, Sue, anything else on that?
I'm good for now.
Thank you for the summary.
Yeah, thanks, John.
I think that's it. Thank you very much, John. Thanks for taking the time. Let's see, we can move on to our next agenda item, which was a presentation by Ohio Epa. Brad or Michelle, did you want to make the introductions on that?
Yes, so Ernie Stahl is here with Ohio EPA, and I just wanted to clarify, he is with the Solid Waste Management Group. So he this group looks at solid waste plans and does the solid waste planning. He is not in the team that reviews facility permits. He's not in the permitting section. So he probably can't answer your questions on permitting, but he's here to talk about the rules. Ernie, do you want to pull up your presentation or do you want me to pull it up?
Let me try sharing my screen here and see what happens. Let me know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay. So as Michelle said, I work in the unit that works with the solid waste districts. And Michelle asked me to attend the meeting just to go over what the rule authorities are for solid waste districts. So I just have a very brief presentation to provide to you. So just to give you a few basics. So the policy committee is the one that decides whether a board of directors will have the ability to adopt rules. They do that through a solid waste management plan. So if they want the board of directors to have that authority, they grant it to them. If they don't, they withhold it. And then the board is the one that actually goes through the process of adopting rules. And they are not able to do that until Ohio EPA approves a plan where the authority is given. The policy committee is not required to confer the authority to the board of directors. And even if they are authorized by the policy committee to adopt rules, the board is not required to actually do it. There are 4 basic areas that the rules say that solid waste districts can adopt rules for. So the first one, I'm going to go over in more detail in a minute, but it's a prohibition or limit on waste imports into the solid waste district. The second one governs maintenance, protection of use of solid waste facilities. And it also allows solid waste districts to require that anybody planning to do activity on a landfill submit plans and specifications to the board of directors. There's another one for allowing solid waste districts to adopt a rule that allows them to inspect solid waste that's generated out of state and that gets transferred into the solid waste district to be disposed. And then the fourth rule governs exemptions from zoning restrictions for both township and county zoning. And it's basically focused on if there was a change to the zoning within 2 years of a landfill having a permit submitted, then the solid waste district can adjust that zoning. So currently we have 21 of the 52 solid waste districts that have adopted rules, so less than half. And if you're interested in reading about the authority, that's the revised codes reference for you. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the C1, the prohibition and limiting waste imports, because it's a little more complicated than the rest of them. So if a district wants to prohibit or limit waste imports from non-member counties in Ohio, and they want to apply that to any facility other than a public facility, they have to submit an application to the director to show that they do not have sufficient capacity to dispose of all their waste within the county. EPA must approve that application before the Board of Commissioners can adopt the rule. So, and EPA, once they issue that action, it is appealable. Any official director's action from EPA is an appealable action. Once the rule is in place, Ohio EPA does have the authority to modify the rule to allow a non-member county to send waste to the solid waste district, provided that there's basically 4 or 5 criteria that are met. So to begin with, the sending solid waste district, the one that's requesting to have its waste sent into the district with a law, has less than 6 months of disposal capacity. They have no facilities that are scheduled to begin operating or built, and they have been unable to site a new facility on their own within their solid waste district. A second one is that the sending solid waste district has made good faith effort to negotiate with other solid waste districts for their disposal needs. The third is that the facility owner in the receiving solid waste district is willing to accept the sending solid waste district's waste. And then finally, the director has to determine that issuing the order is consistent with the state plan and it won't affect the receiving solid waste ability to dispose of its waste for the next 8 years. To date, no solid waste districts have applied for this rule, and it was added. It was not one of the original rule authorities in statute at the time the program was created. It was added in 2009 in response to a rule that the Stark-Tuscaloosa Solid Waste District had tried to pass that would have prevented waste from coming into their 3 counties based on some criteria they had determined. We do have a guidance document that specifies what the application procedure would be if a solid waste district wants to adopt this rule. And I can send you the link to that, or I can send Michelle the presentation with the link in either way. The only other thing I'm going to go over is that there are some caveats from our perspective, from our part. So we do not review or comment on any solid waste district's draft rules. We do not approve draft rules. And in fact, when you have draft rules in your plan, our findings and orders will say these findings and orders approving the plan are not approving your rules. We're not involved in the process of adopting rules. That happens by the board of directors outside of the planning process once the plan is approved. And we don't provide legal advice. What we can do is provide you a list of solid waste districts that have adopted rules so that you can contact them to find out what their experience has been and what their rules are. So that's all I had at this point, Michelle. If you can take control back of the screen, then I can answer any questions that come up.
All right. Thank you, Ernie. Appreciate it. Sue, you have any questions for Ernie?
No, not right now.
Bob?
No, thank you, Ernie. That was
You're welcome.
very helpful.
Hey, Ernie, this is Tony DePucci. I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
So in terms of, well, let's start with your last point about what Ohio EPA is not authorized to do.
Mm-hmm.
And And is that Ohio EPA overall or just the planning division? If you understand the question.
Well, specifically for solid waste management district rules, is that what you're asking about, Tony?
Correct, yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, that would be for the agency in all. So where the portion of the statute that authorizes solid waste districts to adopt rules, then there's a separate portion that specifies the criteria Ohio EPA uses to approve a plan. The criteria we use to approve the plan does not include the district's rules. So that's why we do not approve them. So yeah, you wouldn't be able to get legal advice from EPA on your rules. Did I answer your question, Tony?
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry,
Okay.
that's it, that's what I needed to know. In terms of let's see, trying to remember which one it was, but you had said that
Tony, do you want me to share my screen again? Do you want me to share the presentation
that's
again?
okay. I'm trying to formulate my question, Ernie, so.
Okay.
That's fine, thank you. So you're saying a district does have the potential to basically, I'll say, ban other districts or counties in terms of bringing waste in under certain conditions?
Yeah, the solid waste district would have to be able to demonstrate that they have less than 6 months of disposal capacity for their waste. Rumpke currently has 23 years, so the district's nowhere close to being able to demonstrate that.
Does that prohibition also encompass recycling facilities, material recovery facilities, composting facilities as well, or is it focused on landfill capacity only?
It's focused on landfill capacity. The very first rule that I mentioned that talks about having a rule to govern the maintenance of solid waste facilities governs everything. But that last rule, the one that I was talking about, governs just landfills.
Okay. And then a clarification, I think I know the answer to this, but those rules in terms of the district being able to ban waste generated elsewhere in Ohio, that doesn't apply or does apply to out-of-state waste, which I realize is a completely different topic altogether.
Tony, I would guess that you wouldn't be, I mean, the statute is pretty specific that it's from other counties outside of the district. I would guess that trying to prevent out-of-state waste would violate the Commerce Clause. But, you know, I don't know the answer to that for sure. That would just be my guess.
Okay, yeah, that was sort of the understanding I have. That last topic of out-of-state waste gets much more complicated because it is coming from out-of-state
Correct.
on it. So,
I do have a question. So you said that you can provide us a compilation of current rules?
I can give you a list of the district that have the rules.
Okay, that would be useful. Thank you. If you could do that.
Sure.
Bob,
Hi,
do you have any-
this is Matt Hiddle. Ernie, I think the C2 one that was listed, there is a longer version than what was shown on the screen of what is actually written in statute.
Yes,
might
it was pretty long. So that's the one about governing the maintenance and protection of solid waste facilities. It's a long provision. So I can pull up my screen and show you the actual language if that would help.
Yeah, if you could do it just quickly, you don't have to run through every one of the items, but I think that would give us a good overview.
Tell me if you can see when you can see my screen again.
Yep, your screen's up.
Okay, let me find the right. I need to find the right slide. I'm sorry. So if you look, can you see my notes also?
Yeah, pretty much so, yeah.
The actual language governing C2 is governing the maintenance, protection, and use of solid waste collection, storage, disposal, transfer, recycling process, and resource recovery facilities within the district. and requiring the submission of general plans and specifications for the construction, enlargement, or modification of any such facility to the Board of County Commissioners or Board of Directors of the district for review and approval as complying with the plan or amended plan of the district. That's the full language of that C2 paragraph.
That might be the one of interest to this committee.
Yes, I think you're correct. So as complying with the plan or amended plan of the district. Okay, okay. Sue, Bob, any questions on that C2 language?
I guess, for amending a plan, what is the, process of a plan amendment?
So
Like, I know we have
you,
plan every 5 years, but yeah.
correct. So I believe that the solid waste district is currently in the process of amending its plan. Michelle, does the current plan already authorize the Board of Directors to adopt rules?
It does, yes.
Then you don't need to wait for a new one because you already have given the authorization. You can adopt them under the current rule because you've given them the authorization already.
Bob?
No questions?
All right, I think we can wrap that part up. Ernie, Matt, thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time. We may be back in touch with you, but it was a great overview. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Michelle, do you need us to stay on, or is it okay to exit? Okay, thank you.
Good overview.
Thank you.
So our next topic is titled Subcommittee Discussion on Rules. And I'd sort of like to take a review on that and just, remind everyone what the subcommittee's charge is at this point. Is that I kind of thought of, at least this is the way I understand it, is that it has a more immediate scope, which is to understand the existing rules and regulations, both in terms of and keep in mind that we're taking a broad look at the whole district in terms of understanding the existing environmental and land use zoning and any other requirements that might apply to any solid waste facility. So environmental and land use / zoning are typical ones, but there's also regulations that would come into play from for transportation for roads, and obviously we talked about MSD gets involved and there's stormwater. So there's a lot of different requirements that any solid waste facility needs to meet. And I don't mean these to run in step-by-step process. We could be doing these consecutively, parallel. And then the other thing would be determining whether we see any gaps or supplemental needs in terms of rules and regulations on solid waste facilities. Closely aligned with that is understanding the extent of the district's statutory authority. We already have part of that clarified with that the plan already has given the Board of Directors the authority to adopt rules and regulations, which I think is an important distinction, is that it's not the district that adopts those rules and regulations. It is the board, as I understood Ernie's presentation there. So going back specifically to the subcommittee, our next step is to really, we have to pull all that together, and we need to make a recommendation back to the district policy committee, not to the Board of Directors. And then depending on what the policy committee decides, then there will be the next steps after that, which is they could decide to have the subcommittee do additional work, which would be either develop additional rules or gather additional information. So I don't want to speculate on what the policy committee itself would decide. And then when the policy committee decides that the subcommittee's work is completed, it would make a decision as to what it would take to the Board of County Commissioners. So Sue and Bob, I kind of wanted to bounce that off of you and you guys and see, to make sure everyone is sort of on a common understanding on it.
I would agree, but more expansive role of the subcommittee. I think we were charged, and I think it was in the minutes of the policy committee, that we were charged in offering suggestions for rules as well too. That we were to explore the development of rules as well. Was there a need for rules as well as the development and suggestion of rules for the larger policy committee? We were formed as a subcommittee, not charged with making any decisions, but bringing back to the policy committee some suggestions.
Go ahead, Sue.
I saw it more of like a work group, that we're supposed to be doing research, going out and determining, looking at our rules, doing research, getting input from the community, reading their letters, and determining if additional rules might be needed, and then and making suggestions on what possible rules could be. And I see, based on preliminary information, that we kind of have an urgent need to make some rules quickly, but then we need to, but those rules can always be changed and modified, altered, deleted, expanded, as we get more research, more information, new best practices. So I see kind of a two phases here. I see doing something very quickly, and I also see this as a long deliberative process.
Could you expand upon sort of run through your rationale about how you see what the preliminary information you have seen, and I guess.
Just the letters from the community, and a lot of things that are happening now around the Bond Road site.
And I more expansive than that. I, as the public representative, hear citizens speaking of several sites, not just one site, but the lack of public input on any permit of any facility. So I expand that thought to any facility of any company, the lack of a public review at a local level. Yes, Ohio EPA is there. Yes, there is a review process at the state level, but what's the review process at the local level? And in our processes, our subcommittee's charged with developing rules to present to the policy committee, which then presents it to the county commissioners. The county commissioners act as that local review process, in addition to the Ohio EPA review process. And that is a closer view of, for citizens to voice their concern. And so as the public representative, I feel that's a needed step. And the development of rules that brings that second step of review, I think, is needed. Now, I'm looking at Warren County's rules, and that satisfies that second step. That brings that review to the county commissioners. It brings that view into, it brings that opportunity for the citizens to have that local voice at the county commissioner step, and first at the policy committee, and second at the county commissioner's doorstep. And so I do like what Warren County's processes are. So I'm looking at modeling off of what Warren County has.
I think my thought process on that is that, so Sue, you and Bob said, well, I think what you're saying is you're seeing some deficiencies at this point with the Ohio EPA. I would like to hear, obviously Ernie and Matt can't do this, but I'd like to hear from Ohio EPA the steps and process that they go through, because that's been around for a while, in terms of what they do in terms of either a new one or modifications to an existing one. What are the steps they go through, both on a technical and on a public participation process? Because I think there's more there than what you're seeing.
I'm familiar with their processes. I'm completely open to that discussion. I am familiar with their processes, but I do feel an extra step is necessary for a local conversation with the citizens.
And I think we're probably on the same page in terms of a broader view in terms of, here's how I see it. We have, in facilities in general, solid waste facilities, as I was saying, you have Ohio EPA regulations. You have, if they have land use and zoning requirements, there are MSD requirements, there are, depending on whether it's a city, a township, or county, transportation departments and all that. So those are all things that have to, there's regulations that apply. And if we can, my thought is to look at those and see, oh, so we think there is a gap or a deficit in this arena, and that's where we need to focus our rules, rather than, I think, just putting in a set of rules that another county has adopted. I don't know, I don't think, could be mistaken, but I don't think Warren County has any solid waste facilities. They might have, I don't know, they might have some composting operations. I'm not sure they've ever had any, within the past 10 years, any landfills or material recovery facilities or things of that sort. So that, I was thinking about any of these districts, any of these 21 districts that have adopted rules in terms of how similar to those are those to the Hamilton County Solid Waste District, in terms of the conditions that have existed, say, over the past 5 years or 10 years.
I'm open to that process, but what I'm looking at more is process rather than similar situations. What I'm looking at is the actual process for citizen voice, and taking the actual ability for citizens to be able to have their local representatives, the policy committee level, but more importantly, the county commissioners level, to voice their opinion and display their information that may not be available at other levels of governmental review. There's technical review, there's excellent technical review done at the Ohio EPA level, but is there the citizen input level of review at the county commissioner level? That's what I feel is missing in the processes. The Warren County level, I'd like to introduce a draft copy. As Sue had mentioned earlier, this is the beginning of a process, and what I have to introduce is not the end all. It's not answering every issue. And you mentioned the broader picture earlier, which I would agree with. Introducing rules right now does not answer everything that is to be studied and to be addressed. But the rules that I'd like to introduce answer or address certain issues that have been brought forward to us up to this date, and can be added to, can be added. This is an editing process, and can be brought forward and added to this document, as well as to changed in direction as well too. I'd like to bring forward a draft set of rules. It has not been legally reviewed and therefore cannot be acted on at all. And I'm not suggesting any action at all. I'd like to introduce it as first reading, not to be adopted until it's been reviewed and revised by legal counsel. And I think that's a very important statement there. We will have legal counsel next week, sometime in the near future, on board. And I'd like that legal counsel to review over it, edit it, make recommendations for change prior to any future action on this. But we have the convenience of today's discussion, the convenience of this public meeting, and part of the process is a full public discussion of what we're thinking about. What rules are we thinking and presenting? And I feel like this is kind of like a first draft. It could be considered a rough first draft. It's modeled off of Warren County. If Warren County is not the right model, as you mentioned, Tony, maybe there's another county that we could model off of.
Tony, can I add something?
Sure, yes, please.
We're gonna hopefully have the contracts with outside counsel probably by next week or the following week. Someone else in my office is handling that agreement. So maybe go ahead and accept the document, but no discussions today. Let outside counsel review it, and maybe outside counsel should be able to attend the next meeting. And then we can have discussion then. I think right now, having discussion on something that's not even vetted through outside counsel would not be moving forward the way, as productively as I think it could be.
I could accept limited to very, very limited discussion. I won't walk through the document.
No, I think if you want to submit the document today to Tony, Tony can hand it off to outside counsel. Once Michelle on the solid waste district signs off on it, it'll be handed off to outside counsel, have him review it, and hopefully come more prepared for discussion at our next meeting.
I'm okay with that. My goal for today is to make sure that we're moving forward, and this is the first draft. Much like 95% of this language comes from Warren County, so it's not foreign language. And it's adapted, that has the Hamilton County language in it. So that's the 5%. If it's not, like you say, Warren County has different situations than Hamilton County. If you read through it and see that it's not fitting to this situation, I'm certainly open to revisions or adaptation of a different county's language. I'm open, but it's a first start. It's a first start. But what I'm interested in is moving the dime forward, moving us forward towards a set of rules. And as you read forward to it, you'll see more of what my intent is. I feel like there needs to be a basic set of rules for the district in writing for any, if I say more, then I'm going too far. So
Why don't
I stop there? Yeah.
I think you're all right with submitting it, right? And let legal review it, and then hopefully we'll have something by the next meeting.
Okay, Bob, I take that as a motion. Sue, did you want to second that motion?
I'll
to
second
submit
that.
it for legal review? I'll vote on that. Aye on it. So we can get that part of it going anyway.
Thank you.
But also, please be aware that, so this document's submitted, so is it gonna also be submitted throughout the county also for review? I just wanna make sure. So
No, my feeling is this stays with the subcommittee right now, because I really have been down this road before where you put a document out, it's not gone through legal review, and all of a sudden you send it out, and then it's like, well, you really can't do that, and you really can't do this, or you can do this part, but with restrictions. and all of a sudden, we have sent the information out, and people get confused. They say, well, wait a minute, I don't understand. You had these rules here, even though they're draft, non-binding, blah, blah, blah. You can start walking down that pathway and find out that you've got a wall in front of you. That, oh, well, we really can't do that. That's one thing. Beyond the legal part of it, which is a good, I think that is a good first step. It is that, you know, I'm against duplicating regulations that are already in place. I said that we do need to look at what the existing requirements are. If we feel those need to be added to or voiced. I'm not right now, I'm not at a point where I'm making any decisions about whether rules are or are not needed, whether we need supplemental rules. But I am against duplicating efforts that are already there and that we can already access, whether it's through Ohio EPA, through zoning or whatever, so.
I hear you there. What I would propose is that we hold another subcommittee meeting shortly after receiving the advice of an attorney on these rules.
Shortly is vague enough for me to.
It's vague.
We're coming into
in my view, and is one day after receiving.
I'm not gonna support that.
But my statement is shortly after, receiving the, and we'll look at our calendars.
But we haven't got legal counsel under contract.
No, we
yet,
don't.
So.
I recognize that.
And we're running into holiday seasons here, and a lot of people's schedules are varied. So.
So that I understand, so the document will be submitted to us, right?
Correct.
And meanwhile, it's not gonna be going out to everyone else to review and send comments in, is that correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
All right. I'll make sure.
Nipong, so do you want us to submit that? Do you want us to submit that directly to you, or is there somebody else?
You can submit it to me and I'll make sure it gets to the right hand.
That'd be great.
But the document will become part of the public record, right?
Public record now when it's submitted.
Okay.
So, wait a minute, so you're saying public record in the sense, I don't know how we can submit this without it being public record at this point. Do you still have it? Who has the document right now?
Yeah. You have, yeah, you have it.
Have what?
The document, has the document already been submitted to others?
No, it has not.
So it is not. So you're asking whether or not it's gonna be public in the sense so that it's available for what, public record request?
Once we have the attorney, that we can release it, right?
I don't support releasing this, your draft or whatever it is, out to the public right now. I think it needs to go under a legal review first. And then after we get that back, we can decide what version might get released.
I think I would agree and decide that at the next subcommittee meeting.
Yeah, I just wanna keep it moving fast and get this done before the holidays.
But I would say that this is a public process, so at the point of the next subcommittee meeting, I'd like to have a public, draft of it released to the public.
It is.
Sorry, I have to object. Later, it passed from boss hand, and Susan seemed to be indicating she has it. It became a public record. I immediately asked for a copy as soon as possible.
I lost my train of thought there. I guess the question is to you, Nipong. So, assuming we get our outside legal counsel on board, I'm guessing that there's some attorney-client privilege there in terms of our discussions with
There will be, yeah.
There will be.
During discussions, yeah.
Okay. And Nipong,
let me ask a question.
let me finish.
Okay, go ahead.
You need time to get back to the subcommittee on Tim Morrow's?
Yes.
Okay.
because this just happened so
Right,
quickly.
right.
So, if it will be released, you'll have it.
No, it's not a movie release, it has been released, it's a public record, this citizen.
Okay. Is this the same copy that went out, that's on social media right now? What's the one on social media?
I have no idea, I'm not on social media.
I'm not either, I just was told.
I can't answer that question either.
I have not released it to anybody at all until today's meeting. I did one to Brad, one to Susan, and one to Sue. I have not passed out an electronic copy to anybody.
Yes, it's,
Well, Nifong, why don't you, if you need
yeah,
time to get back
let
to
me
that.
step out a minute, continue your meeting, step
Okay.
out a minute.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I think we've covered item 6, which is kind of the timeline on the process. I don't know if we can add any more to it at this point. Item 7 is outside legal support. I think we've covered that already. We have general
Can I make a
timeline.
statement?
Who is that?
Sharon Lutz?
Sharon?
Yes.
Yes,
There
but
was
you're
a
part of the
question.
support.
Yes, there was a
Okay.
question about the social media stuff. There was a list of proposed ideas of rules that was put out on social media without my consent. And that was just a talk of possible proposed rules for discussion. So that's the answer to that. You were questioning what
Okay,
that was.
I haven't seen it, so I don't know who put it out or who was credited with putting the list together. But I understand what you're saying, Sharon, it's your understanding, anyway, that was a list of things to consider, I guess.
Right, it was just a list of things to consider as possible rules to adopt, but my name was put on it without my consent.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
You're
Tony?
welcome.
I would add that that's the list that Rumpke responded to.
Okay, that's fine. I don't have that. I didn't see it. I didn't see the,
Yeah, I only saw it in the Rumpke letter.
Yeah, that's where I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, so in Rumpke's letter, they're saying this is what was sent out.
It's at the back end of the Rumpke letter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't bring it with me.
and that's how I saw it.
I didn't bring Rumpke's letter with me, so. All right. Thank you, Sharon. I guess we're on to, next steps. I think we've kind of covered that.
Well, I would like to mention on next steps, we have a policy committee coming up, next, week. What may we share from this subcommittee? We should have a report out from this subcommittee at the policy committee.
I think we can give them an update on where we stand, which is, we've held now 2 meetings. And kind of run down things that we have, the critical elements are it's it's a good question, Bob, because I'm not exactly sure what the other policy committee members are going to be specifically interested in, but I think they're going to want to know, where do we stand on things? What have you done? I think probably more than anything else, rather than any positions we've taken at this point. So I can pull that together. That's fairly simple and straightforward. I see it as a bullet list of items. Kind of and here's where we stand on this, and then the next steps we see taking after that.
And they might be interested on any proposed rules, and we may not have any response yet from a contracted attorney yet. I recognize that. So we'll need to know what we can say at that meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
On the proposed rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if we'll have opinion back from legal counsel on that.
Right.
And 2, I think Nifong was pretty clear on even the draft. There's no discussion should take place on that until it's been reviewed by legal. So I can see we could tell them, here's this draft, such no discussion on it. Right? Okay, thank you. Brad, do you have any cards? Thank you. So again, I want to just sort of re-emphasize that you're going to be limited to 2 minutes, but ask, you can say whatever you want during those 2 minutes, but would ask that, you focus on new information. That would be the most productive for everyone. And Brad's got the time up here, so you can see it as you come up to the podium. Please give your name, your affiliation, and we will cut it off at 2 minutes.
Tony, there will be an audible sound as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brad. So we've got 1, 2, 3, we've got 4 cards here. Carrie, you want to go first?
No, I'll go last, thank you.
Carrie,
I signed in last, I'll go last, thank you.
there are no rules about when you sign in terms of when you get called. You can come up and speak now if you like.
I just like to let other people freely express themselves before I dominate. I would like to request that Bob and Sue pose a motion to, forward the draft of your rule, to be submitted so that the committee can also start working on it. So I would ask before you leave today that you do propose a motion for your rule to be forwarded to the policy committee before you leave today. It's imperative.
All right, thank you, Carrie. I'm going alphabetically here, I think. Tim, Mara? Hey, I'm sorry, Tim, can I just interrupt, because I'm a little confused. Are you here representing yourself? I know you're involved with, I'm sorry, Oxbow, is it?
I'm here as a member of the board of directors of Oxford.
Okay, great, thank you.
You could add myself to that too. And thank you. I agree with Susan's early remark about this adoption of rules should proceed in 2 phases. I think you quickly need to get a set of rules adopted, a minimum kind of a set of rules, in order that there be no doubt that it would apply to any application that might be made for a solid waste facility. It's obvious concern about Rumpke. They might apply in the interim before rules are adopted, and then that would raise a legal question of whether those rules apply to an already pending application. So to eliminate that doubt, I agree with Terry, that we need to act quickly. We hope whether you forward Bob's draft or the Oxbow list of rules that was in John Seabor's earlier letter to you, or other lists such as Carrie's, send them all. Just get moving on that, and so that we can not be at peril. I agree with Bob's suggestion about citizen input. And in addition to whatever document Bob handed to Susan, everything that's exchanged then becomes a public record. So I'm going to copy ASAP of that suggested list that Bob had proposed. I will also remind you that you're under an obligation to conduct all discussions in public and not in a private, closed-door kind of forum. So we intend to participate and listen to all these discussions so we are fully understanding whatever it is you decide. Lastly, I'll comment, I think you have rather strange order of business on your agendas here. I noticed at the last 2 meetings you have, at the end, citizen input. That may mean that it comes after you make decisions. So I suggest you consider another format that would allow citizen input before you make decisions and not afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Sounds like a fire alarm. Thanks for staying within the 2 minutes as well.
Sure.
So I have 2 other ones here, and one is Bill Rumpke, and one is Jim Faxon. Jim Faxon is also with Rumpke, and I'm just asking, you can do this however you want. If one of you just wants to speak, or both if you want to get up and speak, that's fine, but Bill, I'm kind of going by, alphabetical order here, so if you want to get up.
Good. With the alphabetical. All right. So, as you mentioned, my name is Bill Rumpke III. I'm the Cincinnati Region Vice President for Rumpke. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. For the last 90 years, my family has been committed to helping the region properly dispose of its trash and establishing effective recycling programs. We currently operate the only municipal solid waste landfills in the county, as well as the region's recycling facility. We are a total waste solutions provider, and we adopt the best available technology and practices to meet the needs of the communities we service. I appreciate the passion of this subcommittee, and I believe that we're all working for the same end goal, which is to ensure the region continues to have access to an environmentally sound disposal site. We operate all of our sites with the goal of 100% compliance with all local, state, and federal regulations. As mentioned during the meeting, there are many regulations in place today, monitoring everything from odor to dust to groundwater, surface water, wildlife, noise, and everything in between. All of the monitoring is public record, and we are happy to provide additional information regarding any of those results. We have a history of working well with our regulators and this group. I encourage the Solid Waste Advisory Committee and this subgroup to reach out to us for factual information about our site. Our team has a substantial amount of knowledge and can provide insights to this committee and the full advisory team and address any questions involving our sites that would prove beneficial as conversations progress. I appreciate the time and the forum here today, and should you have any questions about our operation, you can reach out to me or one of our team members directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I think we got your contact information. Thank you very much. Jim Paxton. Jim?
Thank you. My name is Jim Thaxton. For the last 22 years, I've had the privilege of representing Rumpke as their general counsel. There's not a whole lot left to add to what's been said today. I had a full presentation ready, but I am very gratified to see the degree to which this subcommittee is willing to dig in and get past the noise and the misinformation that is out there and to get down to actual facts about what the statutory authority of solid waste districts in this committee are. I wish Ernie could have had a chance to go in a little bit deeper into the subsection C2 authority, which is really where the rubber's going to meet the road here, and the requirement that any rules passed by a solid waste district must be consistent with the statutes and all Ohio EPA regulations. So we get into the redundancy issue that the chairman raised also. I'm also glad that the comment and the access to the other districts that have rules was made and that you'll have access to that, because we've seen, again, social media, take it for what it's worth, we've seen citations to Brown County rules from Brown County, Minnesota. So, I mean, it's again, important that this group dig in and get down to the truth of what matters. And then the last thing I would like to mention, I think the speed need is a red herring. The facility is already there, it's already permitted, it's existing, it's open. So I think that we have to do this before Rumpke acts. Permits are already in place. So that, and in my experience, fast rules tend to be poor rules, and poor rules just pay lawyers like me. So the methodical, direct, educated process that this committee is going under, we support, and we would be happy to work in any way we can to support that.
Thank you, Jim. We have anyone online, you know?
Looks like no one has expressed in the chat function, but if anyone wants to raise their hand, now would be the time to do that for public comment. Looks like we do not have anyone.
Great, thank you, Brad. Yifeng, do you have anything to report back to us?
I do. As long as Susan marked, I don't know how many pages that document has, as long as you mark draft on each page, then it does become a public document. And as long as everybody who's getting this document, this copied document, knows that it's not the official document of this subcommittee, that's fine.
Could I make one other suggestion on this?
Yep, go ahead,
Is
please.
that, when we put a date, today's date?
Yeah, date it.
So, as versions get, if you put draft and, I know, but if you,
Whoever
we need it on every
wants
page.
it. I was gonna write down everything.
Right, yeah. That's
So
it.
just
Yep.
draft on each page?
Draft.
There's a
and-
date on it? Or are there dates on every page?
each page.
Yep,
Okay, thank you, Nipong.
all right, we're good.
And we, on our website, we have a records request section, if you wanna do it there, or if you wanna send an email to, probably Michelle, would you be the best to take that email?
Yeah, Michelle, you're on mute, but.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was a question. Yes, you're welcome to email me. I, just a heads up, it is Veterans Day tomorrow and I have Friday off, so, but I will get back to you as quickly as I can.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. With that, I think we can wrap up today's meeting. We're not setting the next meeting because that's contingent on the legal opinion on the draft rules. With that, I take a motion to adjourn. Sue? Bob? All right, we're adjourned. Who seconded that? Sue? Bob?
I second.
No,